The next Super Smash Bros. Roster has the potential to be insane. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 6 years since the release of Smash Ultimate, a game that brought us some of the most unlikely gaming characters and brought them together. Characters like King K. Rool, which was one of the most heavily requested characters, joining Steve from Minecraft. This roster is absolutely insane, and it becomes difficult to imagine what the future of the series is gonna look like. But let's be super clear, there will likely be another Smash Bros. Entry in the future. The game went on to become the highest selling fighting game of all time. With over 34 copies sold, it instantly became a staple if you had a Switch. Nintendo is not gonna give up that bag, but the form of Smash Bros might be entirely different. We might get a gutted roster with only a handful of characters from the last entry, or they might just continue to build on what already exists. Regardless, with the rumors of the Nintendo Switch 2 appearing right around the corner, it's only logical to consider what characters would be in this next Smash Bros. So I put together 10 characters that I would absolutely adore in this game. Think of this as a wish list of some of my favorites because that's a big part of the Smash Bros hype, hoping that your favorite gaming icon is able to make it into the giant brawl. For this video, I selected 5 first-party characters when it comes to Nintendo games, and 5 third-party characters that would also fit pretty well into the mix. I wanted to get this video out before the next console generation begins, but before I get into it, let me know 2 characters you guys want to see. Give me 1 first-party character from Nintendo or a third-party character from a different developer. And while you're down there, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Nintendo content, as these are 10 characters I want the most in the next Smash Bros. Game. I know a lot of y'all are like, another Mario character? Well, yes, Mario has carried this entire company on his back for decades. I think they should give him a few more slots for his RPG ventures. Obviously, the first choice that comes to mind is Paper Mario. The Paper Mario of the Mario RPGs is the only one that has been able to remain consistent throughout the years with new entries. Every new console generation has offered a new Paper Mario adventure, and he's always been drastically different than Mario. With a heavier emphasis on him using his hammer and potential paper forms for transformations, I think he would fit in perfectly into Smash. I like to think he would function similarly to Mr. Game & Watch being a completely 2D character artistically, and I don't think it would be too weird to have another Mario character thrown into the game. Heck, the entire plot of Mario and Luigi Paper Jam is that Paper Mario exists as a separate entity all on its own. Turn him into a paper airplane and throw him into Smash Bros. I remember back in the day watching that Sora and Smash reveal trailer, and for a moment there, we somewhat thought that that fire on the ground was going to be a reference to Dark Souls. Fortunately, it turned out to be the Kingdom Key, and I completely lost my mind, but that doesn't mean that Dark Souls isn't an excellent pick for a third-party character. For starters, it has its own amiibo figures, which is pretty rare for third-party characters, and Dark Souls Remastered on the Nintendo Switch was a big hit to get players into the series for the first time. I think a big part of his inclusion is just expanding on the more mature IPs making their introduction into Smash Bros, and in the case of Dark Souls, there's just so much you can pull from when making his moveset. I imagine he would be a sword user with a heavy use of magic, similar to how Robin is. In general, Dark Souls defined an entire genre of games since its debut, and it has become a staple of what it means to be a difficult game in the modern era. It's nearly impossible to talk about hard games without someone mentioning it being the Dark Souls of this or that. It just has that much weight, so he's a pretty easy inclusion for the next game. When looking at the Pokemon roster, there's literally thousands of different creatures to choose from. Ideally, new Smash Bros. Games typically introduce the starter Pokemon from the new generation that releases around that time. Like in Smash 4, we got Greninja because this was around the time of Pokemon X and Y, and with Ultimate, we got Incineroar as the Pokemon from Sun and Moon. Looking at the current roster, we have 2 Water-type Pokemon, 2 Fire-type Pokemon, but only 1 Grass-type starter Pokemon. While Ivysaur is fantastic and considered one of the best characters in the game, I think adding Grovyle as an additional Grass-type would be pretty cool. And not just any Grovyle, it would be super cool if they made references to Pokemon Mystery Dungeon's Explorer of Sky and Darkness. And time? I think time was, yeah, time. For those unaware, these are Pokemon spin-offs with a much bigger emphasis on story, and Grovyle is a key player in that entry. I also like the idea of a middle evolution just being included just like Ivysaur. Give him a small scarf and we'll be good to go. Plus, the lack of third generation representation in Super Smash Bros. Is super low. I imagine he'd be pretty quick like Greninja, but features his own grass-type special moves, like Leaf Blade being a part of his kit. Regardless, Smash Bros. Referencing mystery dungeons would be a dream come true. Do you remember what it was like being a Nintendo fan right at the start of 2020? Players were eager to get their hands on Animal Crossing New Horizons, and a big part of the campaign for advertising that game between the community was the fact that the game shared a release date with Doom Eternal. 2 games that are totally different in tone came crashing together with tons of support. Even now, Doom and Doom Eternal are playable on Nintendo Switch, often being considered some of the best third-party ports to exist on the platform. The fact that they're able to get a game running like this twice is nothing less than a miracle, which leads Doom Guy right into Super Smash Bros. I mean, in this day and age, Doom Guy is officially owned by Microsoft, with the company purchasing Bethesda for $7.5 billion. I mean, Microsoft got Steve and Banjo-Kazooie to join in the game, so Nintendo has the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever and make this canon. I imagine he'd be a shooter character similar to Samus, but he also has a good chunk of physical moves to show off his might. Of course, they'll have to turn down the violence of his character a little bit, considering, you know. So this one might be a bit of a strange pick, but hear me out. When looking at The Legend of Zelda, most of what we're going to pull from the modern era is from two games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. These are the newest versions of Link and everything the Hyrule Realm has to offer. While this character has existed since the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, it really started to put itself on the map with how easily it was folding players every time you encountered them. And I'm not talking about Impa or Girahim or any of that. Anyone who has played the newer Zeldas know the true fear of encountering a Lionyl. Those centaur-like enemies are incredibly tough, often taking out Link without much of a hassle. And I don't think his massive size is going to be much of a game changer, considering they were able to make it so Ridley worked in context and he's basically a giant dragon. I like to believe that the Lionyls will be a heavy character with good sword moves and a bow projectile. It would also be a moment where someone from the Zelda roster isn't one of the main characters. The Zelda mythos is full of so many dangerous creatures, but the Lionyl has been one consistently putting fear inside of my heart. Throw him in the next Smash Bros and let's see what he can do with the power of the player. I'm also a big advocate for them adding more supervillains into the mix. Since the amount of heroes in the games is so massive, more bad guys would definitely mix it up. At first, I was considering putting Shadow in this slot, as he would be likely similar to Sonic and even be an Echo Fighter for him, but then I thought about someone who would have a much more interesting moveset, and my mind jumps right into Dr. Eggman. In Smash Ultimate, Dr. Eggman is treated as a spirit, being played by Roy from the Bowser Jr. set. I think it's important for Eggman to be inside of some sort of mech to be able to dish out his damage. I imagine him being in a vehicle similar to the one Tails rides in Sonic Adventure 2. Personally, I think it would be really cool to put Eggman in some brand new ride. A new mech that is Smash Bros exclusive and has never been seen before in a Sonic game. As long as it leans into using technology to bring down your foes. Not only that, but Dr. Eggman is one of the most iconic gaming villains to ever exist. Getting Jim Carrey to play you in a live action movie is not something that is considered light work. They usually bring out the big guns for Eggman, and I hope that's true when they add him into Smash Bros. Now, I'm someone who has been part of the Smash Bros community since I was just a little kid. I remember going to the local library and looking at the Smash Dojo whenever they had some new information. But one of the most requested characters of all time seemed super strange to me. Whenever I would go into forums, I would always see Gino to be a top pick as a fighter, and I remember not knowing who this character was. Eventually, I played Super Mario RPG when it came out for the Virtual Console on the Wii, so I was excited to see what Gino could do. And honestly, in that game, it's not that much. His plot for the most part is that he's here to repair the Star Road and possesses a doll to make that happen. And that's pretty much it. I never disliked Gino, but I never understood the hype surrounding him. But now I can respect and get that Gino is a bigger deal because of his Smash Bros hype than his actual in-game debut, to the point where they made Gino a playable Mii fighter in the most recent entries. I'd like to see Gino added because he's one of those long-time requests, a true fighter that has been in the depths of the request list waiting for his time to shine. And with the recent release of Super Mario RPG Remake being a big hit, and Gino reappearing in the public psyche again, it might be time for a Super Smash Bros. Debut. I remember looking for a new Nintendo Switch game to play back in the day, but I was looking for something new, something that I have not played before. Someone with a massive critical acclaim and praise. One of the biggest flexes of the Nintendo Switch is that it's an absolute monster when it comes to its indie lineup. Most indie games aren't the most graphically demanding, meaning the Nintendo Switch is able to run most of these games with little to no compromise. And one of the best games I've ever played in handheld mode has got to be Hades. If you've never played Hades before, you take control of Zagrias as he's attempting to escape the underworld. Through trial and error, you become stronger as you continue deeper into the underworld. And Hades was on the Nintendo Switch first alongside its PC and Mac releases, meaning the Nintendo Switch version was the first console port of the game. Personally, I think adding Zagrias as a playable character would be good for some indie representation. And I don't want to sit here and act like Hades isn't a game full of praise and love, but damn, this game is so good and it had its first break on the Nintendo Switch. I also like the idea of his inclusion leaning into the identities of Pit and Palutena, considering both characters know about the underworld and such. I would love to see what they have to say about Zagrias. Do you remember when they added Wii Fit Trainer to Super Smash Bros? I mean, it was pretty obvious since Wii Fit was a massive thing for Nintendo during that era, but as Nintendo has moved away from the casual fitness ventures, they did something right with the Nintendo Switch era, and that was the debut of Ring Fit Adventure. Ring Fit Adventure is a game for the Switch that came with its own exercise ring, bringing together a fantasy adventure game with proper exercises that will cause you to sweat. I own one of these things, and let me tell you, this is one of the best exercise games out there. You'll be jogging in place, doing squats, jumps, and everything. So I think it's pretty obvious to put the Ring Fit Trainer as a playable character. Not only that, but do you know how much copies this game has sold? Ring Fit Adventure is currently the 11th best-selling Nintendo Switch game of all time with a whopping 15 million units sold. For context, this game has sold more than Pokemon Let's Go, the Diamond and Pearl remakes, Luigi's Mansion 3, Super Mario Wonder, and Mario Party. I would have never guessed a fitness game would go on to do numbers like this in a post-Wii era. It's a monster of a game that Nintendo should not sleep on when adding new reps. This final character is exclusively on the list because of how important it would be for the gaming culture. Since Smash 4, Super Smash Bros. Has been a series where characters from other companies can appear and celebrate their legacies. Considering Steve and Banjo were given up by Microsoft, and we got Disney participating by putting Sora in the game, Capcom has plenty of reps with Mega Man and Street Fighter, but there is one member of the competition that has no form of rep at all, and that's coming from PlayStation. And I think Crash Bandicoot would fit perfectly into this game. He's a colorful platforming icon with a long root in gaming history, even though now that the Crash Bandicoot IP is owned by Activision, they seem to be doing nothing when it comes to new games. Crash will always be a PlayStation character in the eyes of the public. He was that icon that would appear in every PlayStation owner's collection. So seeing him with a new Smash Bros. Look as we get Nintendo, Microsoft, and PlayStation all under one roof, I think it would be one of those moments that brings everyone in the gaming space together. And I think that's something that would make the next Smash Bros. A true step in the right direction. But yes, these are 10 characters that I would absolutely love to see in the next Smash Bros. I wanted to make this video before we got anything officially announced so I can look back at it and see how right or wrong I am. A big part of the Smash Bros. Hype is hoping to see your favorites make an appearance. Those trailers always drive up such excitement, it was hard to get anything else done that day when a new character was revealed. Like, I'm definitely someone who boots up other people's reaction videos as soon as a reveal is made, just to see the joy and happiness but overall surprise in people's eyes. There's nothing like Smash Bros. Hype. But of course, let me know what you think of my list. Do you hate it? Do you love it? Any potential changes? Do you think some of these are just really silly? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and stay awesome.